So Jagex are now in a position of, okay, well, we don't want to screw this up again. So what do we do? And they did a poll on that specific update. And it was like, okay, well, most of them want this. So, you know, over a 70% vote of yes, we'll take it. We'll add that. And they were doing that for every update now. Absolutely everything that goes into the game, unless it's like an integrity change or a bug fix, is polled. And not many, if any, games that I know of actually do that. It's really interesting. I mean, the polls have their problems as well. God knows they do. But it's interesting. It's completely different, like you say, atypical to any other MMO. So this now leads to a problem. Jagex did originally want to add sponsored content to old school RuneScape. And their example could not have been worse. They were like, imagine you buy a bag of Doritos, right? And on there's a code that changes the color of your home teleport animation to yellow or orange. And everyone's like, why would I want that? But they had to poll it. And of course, it was voted 96% no, we don't want that. So they didn't add it. What happens when someone takes over this company, which we're going to get into in a second, that doesn't care about the legacy of the game and is probably going to repeat the same mistakes again and live to regret it? Let's put it that way.
You would think the polls would result in a Bodie McBoatface. Like you would think the polls, because I think it's not an uncommon thought. I think the majority of people feel like we are in the minority that know what's best for our game, and that if popularity contests were allowed to steer our game, that would only be bad news. That you know, a certain class would be overbuffed, or that a certain content would get ignored. But in reality, like at least in the old school RuneScape community, it does seem that the majority genuinely think about the health of the game, because they do vote down things that you see other game devs do, and then they get a heavy amount of engagement. So you just, I don't know, it just makes me think less of the world. Yeah,
you brought a good point there. I think the reason this works so well with RuneScape is two reasons. One, it is a classless system. There is no one player that becomes more powerful than another based off a vote, right? Maybe depending on an item that they have that their friend doesn't, sure. But like that can be changed, right? Every account can get every item. So that's interesting. But I also think the reason that the players vote with integrity is because they've been through the ringers already. Like they've been through terrible updates. They know that it might seem great, you know, in the beginning, like, oh, you get double. We're going to double the amount of logs that you get woodcutting. And that sounds great, right? Everyone gets more money in theory. But then they realize that the price of it crashes and goes down to half. And it's just exactly the same, pointless. But now you've got to get twice as many logs. Like the players actually think ahead and know the kind of repercussions of the updates. They know how it's going to affect the game. And I think that can only exist because these people have been through this with the original version of the game. I think if you put this in RuneScape 3, a poll system like this for every update, it would be a disaster. It would just be a total disaster.
So you don't think we could pick this up and learn from it in like WoW's Season of Discovery, which seems to be a more feedback-driven model? Like Season of Discovery, the interviews behind Season of Discovery were like, we can already tell you haven't played it yet. It's going to be buggy. Like we can already tell you, there's going to be weird things. Like we know this. It's meant to be art from the get-go. It's not meant to have the same polish as retail. That's
a fantastic point. And I wouldn't liken that to polls in RuneScape. I would compare that to leagues in RuneScape. So if you've never played old school RuneScape, they're doing something called leagues, which is, hey, developers, you've got 4 months to throw together the most wacky and absurd game mode that you can think of. There are no restrictions on it. Do whatever. And some of these game modes is like Trailblazer, where originally every single area in the game was locked. And you had to unlock that area, and you could only do stuff in that area. So you log in, start at Lumbridge, and it's like, right, pick where you want to start. And you can only unlock adjacent towns. So it's kind of like fog of war on the map, right? And it completely changes the way that things happen with this, because now some of the max gear, you have to decide from day one what's happening, right? Because the max mage gear might be in one area, and you have to decide day one, am I planning to use mage? Cool, I'm probably going to want to go there. So I need to start somewhere near there and be able to get to there. And there's so many other different just like different methods that they can use for this, sort of like Season of Discovery. And they are some of the most popular months on RuneScape. They've just had the end of a league recently, and player numbers were at an absolute all-time high. I think it was something like, people will have to correct me in chat, something like 250,000 concurrent players on old school. Like, it's skyrocketed. And of course, people don't want to log in on their main account to play this kind of like fresh league that they're playing, because they still want to like AFK train stuff on their main account. So what do? They make an alt account and buy membership on that. So now Jagex is double dipping on all of the membership fees, which is fantastic, right? Credit to them. It's genius.